We're going to take a deeper look into what material options are underneath all of our 3D layers. We glanced over this topic a while ago, but we're going to see exactly how they affect our text layers and how we can create reflections using environment layers. So let's get started. Create a new composition, and we're going to set the preset to HDTV 1080 because it's going to give you a better quality and it has higher dimension. I'm going to stick with this one, 1080, 30 frames per second. And I'm going to keep the resolution at full. Background color can be black. Let's name this Final Scene. So there's my composition. Now we're going to create a text layer. The options that we're going to see will be applied to both text layers and shape layers. I will use a text in this lesson, but you can go ahead and use a shape layer. You want to choose a very thick font, so we have more room for this reflection. I'm going to stick with Arial Black. Then we're going to click away and make this layer 3D. Have your renderer on Cinema 4D so we can access those material options. Now we're going to create a new camera. Leave everything be, hit OK. Bring it above your text layer, and using C on our keyboard to get the orbit around tool, we're going to rotate this so we get more of the extrusion and the reflection. Have it in this angle, then go into your text layer. Open up the options, geometry options, and we're going to set our bevel style to convex. Increase the bevel depth to maybe 8. And finally add 100% for extrusion depth. Alright, so we got our text. Now it's time to add a floor so we can see the reflection of our text. Create a new solid layer. Can be any color, it doesn't really matter. Then make this 3D. Hit R on your solid layer and type in 90 degrees for X rotation. Grab the hit V on your keyboard, use Y to just move this down until we got a nice floor for the text. You can grab the sides here and just increase it until we get a good floor. Hit S and just increase this all the way. Make sure you're not blocking your text layer. Open up your floor layer, go to Material Options. And before I get started with the rest of this process, I'm going to explain real quick what each of these sliders do. So the first thing is Cast Shadows. This is basically whether or not your shape will cast a shadow when we use light layers. This is not that important for this lesson, so I'm going to leave it off. When it's on only, it means that we're only getting the shadow of our floor layer. So you can see the floor itself just disappeared. That's because we're only keeping the shadows of it and not the actual layer. Let's turn this off. Then we have Accept Shadows and Accept Lights. This is again related to whether or not you want shadows on your text and if you want the light layers to affect it. I'm going to leave it as default. Our next option is Appears in Reflections. So basically you're telling After Effects whether or not this will show on the other layer's reflection. So if I had another text here, will this text show up in the reflection or will it not? We again have the on, off, and only option. So if you put only, you're just going to get the reflection in that other text. Then we have ambient, which is how much light there is in this layer. We have diffuse, which is the softness of this layer. So you're just going to make it really soft when you use the diffuse option. Kind of set these back into what they were by grabbing these two, right click, reset. Then we have something called specular intensity. Now specular is the light that is naturally on reflective surfaces. Sometimes it can be like a straight line, other times it could be radial. It's talking about that gleam of light that shows up on reflective surfaces. So if you shine a flashlight onto a mirror, you're going to see the light from the flashlight and around it, whatever is in front of that mirror. So with the specular intensity, we can decide how bright that gleam of light is. We're not really seeing it right now because we haven't made this reflective yet, but I'm going to show you in a second what that looks like. Then we have specular shininess, and this is talking about how glossy that gleam of light looks like. Next, we have metal, and when I increase this, it's going to take away from the value of the shape, or solid in our case. So if I increase this, I'm going to reduce the cyan and end up with a white color. It's a pretty helpful slider, but we're not going to be using it in this example. Finally, we have reflections. The first one is reflection intensity, which is how vibrant that reflection is. We have reflection sharpness, which is how blurry or sharp that reflection is. And finally, roll-off, which is the amount of intensity of that reflection at different angles. Again, we're going to take a look at that in the rest of this process. Alright, so I have my text layer and my floor layer. I just went ahead and changed the color from that cyan into this gray, which you can also do by holding down Command-Shift-Y, Control-Shift-Y on Windows, and just change your color right here. Now let's open the material options for both of these layers. Select your floor layer first, hit A twice on your keyboard, and we're going to see the material options. So what we're going to do is to leave everything as it is. The only thing that we want to change is the reflection intensity. When it's set to 0, that means that this layer will not be getting any reflections. But when I increase it, we're going to get only the reflection. So essentially, we just turned our solid into a mirror that is placed underneath our text. At the same time, we can reduce the reflection sharpness to about 50%. Now we are getting this grainy look because of our composition's sampling rate. If yours is not grainy, then you're good to go. But if you are seeing something like this, just hit Command K on your keyboard, Control K on Windows. Head over to the 3D renderer, Cinema 4D, but in the options, we're going to grab the slider from draft into either typical or extreme. You don't want to go all the way because it's going to make your laptop slow. So what we're doing right now is increasing the layer sampling. Hit OK, and immediately you can see that it's no longer grainy. Once we have that, we can now go ahead and do the same thing with our text layer. Hit A twice. I'm going to come down here and increase my reflection intensity. Just until I'm happy with it. I think I'll leave mine around 22%. Let's reduce reflection sharpness to 50%. We're going to come back to this later. Let's just leave it at 22%. For lighting, typically we would use a light layer. But in this lesson, we're going to introduce something called an environment layer, which is basically where we get to take a 3D image and basically make it an environment. So it will be everywhere in our composition. And since we have these two set as reflections, it's only going to show up in their reflection. Let's see what happens when I don't have a reflective object and I just try to make an environment layer. Make a new composition. So I have an HDRI file here that I just dragged into my composition. Hit S and just scale it as you'd like. So this right now is not an ordinary image. It's not a PNG or a JPEG. It's actually a 3D image. So you can get more of these on this website. So you can go into this website. It's 3D Asset Library, meaning that you can get 3D models, textures, and HDRIs. This is what we're using in this example. You can get tons of free stuff here. It's a pretty cool platform. I recommend you guys checking it out, and it could be helpful for your future projects. Now let's go back into After Effects. So I have this right now. Let's see how we can turn it into an environment layer. Select your layer down here, go to Layer, Environment Layer. There we go. Now you can see we get this globe shape on our layer, and it's actually nowhere to be seen. So the layer right now is all over our composition, but the only way that we can see it is if we have reflective objects in our project. So as a regular file like this, nothing will show up. But when we go to our scene where we do have objects accepting reflections, we can actually see that image in the reflections. So drag this above, bring the camera above, let's lock the camera. Do the same thing again, and there we go. We can see the image in the reflection of this solid or the floor layer. And once we hit R, we can get different results. So if I rotate this maybe 90 degrees, I'm gonna get a different side. I'm also gonna increase my solid layer so I don't get the black wall. Gonna hit S and just unlink them. So I can just scale it that way and the other way. Select your layer, then double click on the rectangle to make a mask. Then we can just feather out the edges. And then we'll get a softer result on the edge of our work. Now go to your text layer and in the materials option, then increase the reflection intensity. Now I'm seeing my image in the reflection. Pretty cool. Leave the sharpness as it is. I'm going to go back to my floor layer, hit A twice. Pretty good. I think I'll just rotate it like this. So when I rotate it, we're getting the reflection like this. And I'm sure you can see the image in the back. So we can just work with the rotation of our shape. I'm going to go back to what it was and try to get a different lighting as we go. So each time that you rotate your shape, the floor layer I mean, you're gonna get a different lighting onto your text. So without using light layers and other methods, we're able to create this really easy reflection, which is looking pretty realistic. I'm gonna use my camera layer to do a simple animation. Hit P on my keyboard, make a keyframe, push it forward, use position Z to just move in towards my text. It may take a bit longer to load since we did increase our sampling rate, but this way we can get the full resolution for our work. If you want to do more adjustments and this whole long render process isn't doing it for you, you can just reduce from your rate and then turn it back on when you're about to export. So again, we're getting this grainy effect, but at least I get to get a faster load for my composition. I'm going to go into 2View so I can see exactly how my camera is moving and just move this camera somewhere like this, I would say. So we get a really 3D looking animation. We're looking at the ground, it's fine. And then it's going to zoom out to our original settings. I'm going to leave mine just like that. So once I'm done animating and just finished with the way my text looks, I can go ahead and bring back my sampling rate. This will leave me with a pretty smooth reflection. So that's how you can use material options to give really good reflections for your text and shape layers. I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson, and I will see you in the next one.